Hi guys, how you diddling? Welcome to Martine Talks. So, today I want to talk about addiction. Forgive me, I always take a drink at the beginning of a video, and that's because I get a dry throat talking too much. Yeah, and I want to kind of sum it up, if that's possible, into a short video. It's very complex, so that's a hard task, that's for sure. But this is my take on it, my words. It's from a mix of my personal and professional experience. And there is lots of theories about addiction out there. But I think this is the general consensus about what addiction is today. But it's by no means a definitive kind of answer to what is addiction. Like I say, it's in my own words, so if you want to do your research, and remember that this is just my take on it. So on that note, let's talk addiction. Okay, so what is it? So addiction, it's a disease, disorder, it penetrates body, mind and soul. It's part of it is relapsing in nature. And it's the seeking of a substance of behaviour despite negative consequences. You can't really sum it up in definition, but you get the picture. How is it influenced? So it can be genetics, so genetically predisposed. I know I am. My father died of alcoholism. A big part of that was denial. Denial was a big part of it, and this is when we talk about the mind aspect of it. And it can be about exposure to drugs, your environment, stresses of life, and traumatic events, trauma, that kind of thing. And it's something that you can't get diagnosed for. I might have an idea about someone, and I might think they're an alcoholic, or I might think they're an addict through their behaviour, their actions, that kind of thing. But I can't ever say for sure. The only person that can say it is ourselves. I can only say that I'm an alcoholic. No one can tell me that I am, despite what they might think and see. And it's the only disease or disorder that tells you haven't got it. And this kind of will give you an idea, a flag up of why it's so pervasive and fucking so baffling. I want to talk about that part. Why is it so fucking baffling? And I get it. People don't understand addiction, and I know. I understand why that is. Sometimes it used to trouble me. I wanted people to get me, but people haven't got to understand addiction. As long as I understand it, that's the important thing. But I want to go some way in this video to kind of explain why it can be so baffling for the person themselves, but also for the family and friends of the person in that addiction. So, okay, the part of why it's so baffling is because it penetrates body, mind and soul. So there's three aspects to it. Let's start with the body. And I'm going to specifically talk about alcoholism here for this purpose, for talking about the body. Now, I have an allergy to alcohol, and the allergy manifests in craving. I crave it. So, when someone will understand when they go, I think I've had enough. I never got that off switch. Perhaps I did in the beginning. And that's another thing I want to say. Throughout this video, I'm going to be talking about a continuum, meaning that, this is the start of the addiction. And there's you can't really pinpoint it, really. But it's when you're still sort of, maybe for me, drinking, and I'm kind of getting away with it. It's not really having too much of an impact on my life, and I'm probably still enjoying it. Negative consequences at a minimum. And here is either death or jailed or gone into a mental facility, or, when I'm kind of on my knees with it. So that's when I talk about a continuum. Now, with my body, in the beginning, I might have had an off switch, but as time goes on, in the abuse of alcohol, that off switch is gone, really. And I get that craving until I'm comatose, pretty much. There's no really a time when I would stop. Once I've started having a drink, then it's never enough. And people then think, well, you know, if you haven't had a drink for X amount of years, then you must be okay to drink it now. And I always come back with, you know, nut allergy as an example, that if someone's not had a nut for 10 years because they've got an allergy to it, haven't eaten nuts, then they can't then 5 years down the line start eating it. They have an allergy, a fatal allergy sometimes. But, you know, that's why I can never drink. My body just doesn't react well with alcohol. But that's only part of it, of course. And the withdrawal with alcohol is fatal if you've become dependent on it. That's how much my body can become addicted. And different substances might have different withdrawal processes. When we're on that final part of that continuum, it's all pretty fucking harsh and, you know, and kind of grim. But that's the body. So that's the physical addiction part. And that's just the beginning, right? Then we talk about the mind. Now, I have an obsession, or did have, but when I was in active alcoholism, I had an obsession to drink, to get alcohol. But also the obsession isn't just that, it's deeper than that. It's a kind of idea that I can drink normally. It's not necessarily that I have that idea I can drink normally. It's the idea that I want to desperately, and I will just keep going. So the insanity is there. The insanity that I can keep drinking. Despite my negative consequences, I can keep drinking and it'll be all right. And the insanity is I'm keep repeating that behaviour. And so it's penetrated the mind, and the obsession is to get the alcohol, but also that I want it to stay in my life. I want to continue drinking. But more than that, I'll come on to that in a minute, that it penetrates the subconscious, and this is where we're kind of banging trouble. And this is where the baffling part comes out. But yeah, so it's body, physically I'm addicted, and then you have the mind where I have an obsession and I just can't get it out of my mind. I want that substance or behaviour or the alcohol. And then we have the soul. And this is the part that, again, on that continuum wherever we are, we start to engage in behaviours that don't fit us and breaking kind of promises to loved ones, going against our values and our ideals in life. So we start to take on this different persona, and this is where the shame comes in, and shame's really pervasive and painful. I think it's Brené Brown that talks about how painful and difficult shame is, and that's the biggest or fatal part of, you know, addiction. That shame that comes in, and it's because we're kind of going against everything that we've believed, and, you know, so we don't want to sit with ourselves really, and that kind of perpetuates that behaviour of oblivion. And the substance or whatever it is that we want to use or we pick up, like my gateway is alcohol. That's the one I chose first. My personality, how I'm made up, my idiosyncrasies, just who I am, it fits with alcohol. Alcohol was the one that got me the oblivion that I sought. And some people, it might be whatever it is. It might be a behaviour, it might be shopping, it might be sex, it might be control, it might be relationships, codependency, whatever that might be. That depends on the person, the individual, but the premise is the same. It's that, you know, we're trying to fill a void, and that's how I relate to it. That I had this part of me that was empty. I felt empty, and trying to fill that with the substance. For me, it was the alcohol. I mean, drugs was a big part of my story, and all the other addictions came into play, but my gateway was the alcohol. And of course it doesn't fill that void, right? But we keep on fucking trying, despite the negative consequences. So we've got the three aspects of it. So if we just start there and say that, you know, this disease of addiction will penetrate my body, my mind, and my soul, my spirit, if you like. So all of it is tarnished with this disease. And so it just kind of shrivels me up. It strips me of everything, of my self-worth, of who I thought I was. Who, you know, I don't know who I am anymore. I just feel empty. I feel lonely. My world gets smaller. I want to isolate. I have shame, so I want to hide from the world, and that's just the start of it. So, okay, so we're talking about the three parts of that, and I want to talk about the baffling part, because I know so many people that look at their loved ones and watch them go through this, and they are like, why the fuck are they doing that? You know, why the fuck would they make that decision, that choice, or take that action? Or, you know, they're hurting themselves, they're hurting their family, they might be losing their jobs, their homes, their family, their children, and going, why the fuck would they still remain seeking that substance or behaviour? So if we talk about, so let's start here, and this is the mind part, of course. We're talking the conscious and the subconscious. So, and I'm talking about everybody here. When we make decisions, we take action in our life, our emotions, our fears, our limitations. 95% of decisions and all those things I just mentioned come from the subconscious, are driven from the subconscious mind. And only 5%, now there might be again a 90%, 10% rule. I'm going with the 95-5 because I've been there. And the 5% is your cognitive conscious decision. So what you think you're making a decision based on cognitive thoughts and processes that you've weighed up in your mind. You fucking ain't. 95% of that is coming from deeper, you know, in your subconscious mind. So, you know, that might go some way into saying that sometimes when we get frustrated, if we want to change behaviour, say it's a diet or a New Year's resolution, whatever it may be, and we're kind of 2 weeks in going, yeah, we fucking got this licked. And then you kind of, you know, it falls by the wayside. And that's because, you know, our kind of patterns of behaviour are so deeply ingrained that our conscious mind can't overcome that. It might temporarily, it might do on willpower temporarily, but willpower by its nature is temporary. That we only have a certain amount in the tank of willpower. And that's why, by the way, willpower's fuck all to do with addiction. So get that out your head straight away. There is no willpower fucking went. Once we're on that continuum and then we're in the addiction, there's no willpower. And that gets progressively worse. Now, if we talk about the end of the scale, so this is when we see people and they're dying, and we can see it physically or we can see it in their actions. We know they're pretty much on the floor, on their knees. This is when it's not only penetrated the subconscious, it's penetrated a deeper part of us where our primitive drives and instincts. So if I'm talking about hunger and water, and thirst. So if I say that, you know, kind of primitively, we have hunger to motivate us to seek food because our body needs food. If we're thirsty, it's so that we're motivated to seek water to make sure that we're hydrated for survival. You might have seen the studies or heard about the studies, I think it was in the 60s or 70s, when mice or rats, before they did the about the environment and the rat park, where they had the mice and the rats kind of morphine-laced water, and they would continually go to the morphine-laced water until death. So they stopped eating. So their seeking behaviour become about that. Now, you can see it if you have any questions about that. If you see people, for instance, on meth or the alcoholics that are really kind of at death's door, and you see them craving the alcohol despite the fact that their body is starving and dehydrated, and you can see it, and it's just grim to see that. That's when their brain's been hijacked, and their drives from that subconscious are kind of it's now seeking that substance that's killing them, instead of getting the things that we need to survive, to nourish our bodies. We're not getting any nourishment anymore. That's where we've been hijacked, and that is obviously on the other end of the scale, but that's how pervasive it is. That's why it's so fucking baffling. And by the way, when we're looking at that person, And we're questioning, why the fuck are you doing that? Why the fuck are you still drinking? Why the fuck are you still using when, you know, this is what's happened to your life? You're destroying your life. Give you a clue. That person's asking the same fucking question. Why the fuck am I doing it? So that's why, you know, it's kind of, it stops becoming a conscious decision. So that might go some way in explaining why it's so baffling. But when we're talking about the mind as well, it also can, with repetitive use and abuse of a substance, it can change the brain's structure and function. This is called plasticity, and it can work in the opposite way, in a positive way as well, but it changes over time, and this can affect the ability of us to have any control over it in our decision making, in the resistance of urges, so we lose control. So it's not just that our drives are kind of been hijacked by our subconscious mind, but also that our mind is changed in its structure and its function. And this is why, you know, being around recovery has to be so intense, that intensity that of our use of that substance, the intensity that we engage in the addiction needs to be matched by recovery, if not exceeded, to be able to revert. And it's like a counter brainwashing, if you like. You know, we're talking serious changes here. This is, if it changes how our brain is formed and how it functions, you can see how deep that penetrates. This is not, people think addiction is what they're seeing on the surface, and it's not. And again, it's not about the substance or the behaviour itself. And the behaviour, we're not ingesting a substance, but what happens is it's the reward system of the brain that's impacted. We get pleasure from that actual behaviour, and then that's reinforced by us wanting to chase that pleasure. And then that can change the structure and the function of our brain. So behaviours are just as pervasive as the substance. And the addiction, the craving comes in because we're seeking that pleasure that was originally got from the behaviour. And just like any substance or behaviour, that euphoria that we got initially, we never get that again. You know, that first euphoria, it's a sort of slippery slope from there. And that's why in the end we're not getting what we wanted to get from it. We were probably self-medicating in some ways, but instead we're adding so much trauma to our lives and dysfunction that it's not working anymore. And that happens pretty quick in addiction, that it stops working. Yet our body then, and our mind and our soul is chasing it. Our body and our mind are, but our soul is kind of dying slowly along with that. Yes, perhaps goes some way to explain the complexities of it and why it's relapsing in nature. And it's kind of, you know, we have to be around it. So let me talk now about recovery. So if I say that, you know, it penetrates our body, mind, and our soul, our spirit, whatever you want to call it, then our recovery has to, you know, kind of meet the needs of those three aspects. And so if we talk about recovery, you have to put that substance or that behaviour down. And if we're talking about alcohol, for instance, that could be fatal. It was in my dad's case. Withdrawal is very fucking serious, and if someone's dependent, they have to be medically they have to withdraw medically, be under medical supervision. So that's not simple in itself, but alcohol can be out of my system pretty quickly. But that's just the start. So, you know, people who think that the alcohol or the substance is the addiction, it's fuck all to do with that, really. Like I said, that's just our way. We've all found our own way that gets us to that oblivion, to trying to fill that void, to change how we feel. But it's fuck all to do with it. Alcoholism is fuck all to do with alcohol. It's the isms, they call it in the room, it's the isms. So it's the kind of character defects or whatever that I've collected on the way by my way of surviving to try and get this substance or whatever. It's changed my whole psyche of who I am. So first of all, we put that substance down, and then the mind part is we have to immerse ourselves in recovery. We have to be around it. We have to hear it, see it, feel it. So literature, meditation, chatting to friends, connecting, getting to meetings. But it's more than that. You know, we have to make it a big part of our lives. My daughter, bless her, had to kind of, she was still young when I first put down the drink, and she didn't understand. She got a sober mum all of a sudden, and then I wasn't around because I was getting to meetings. You know, I chose to do 90 meetings in 90 days in all the fellowships, and I'll explain about all the fellowships in a minute, but because I understood that I needed this to be about everything. Recovery had to be everything for it to penetrate my subconscious. It's repetitive behaviour, it's listening, it's hearing, it's everything, every kind of, it's like every sense I have to, all my senses have to kind of ingest it for it to penetrate the subconscious mind. And my daughter didn't understand at the time, and so that demonstrated her unconditional love, right? She didn't understand it, but she just supported me anyway, and she understands it now. Bless her. Yeah, so it has to be absolutely everything, and we have to be around it. We have to sit on the seat and listen and pick up that book and do what those things that are suggested. See it visually, or so if you go to meetings, you'll see all the kind of words around us, all those kind of slogans that we follow and stuff, because it needs to kind of go deep. So that's the mind part, and then the soul is we do work. We work on ourselves, and that means a big part of that is clearing house, they call it, and that means I have to kind of look at everything that I've done, all those behaviours, not just when I started in that addiction, but right from the start. I have to kind of look at my decisions, every decision I make, every action that I took, and look at my part in that. I have to kind of take accountability and take responsibility for my life, for everything in my life, even those bits that I don't think I'm responsible for. You suddenly kind of learn where you are responsible, and that's because otherwise I'm carrying that shit around with me. It sticks with me, and that's where the shame is. So I need to clear that up, and then I need to start flying straight, or I'll call it flying straight. It's like just living right. And look, and unless you're a psychopath, doing the right thing feels good, and that's it. It's clearing the house and then just living straight, and it's hard because sometimes, you know, especially when you're talking about low self-worth, and it's hard to be honest with people about how you're feeling, and kind of I struggle with that stuff. I struggled to trust. I didn't always feel safe, and you know, I kind of, part of my journey is relapse, a big part of my journey. Now, I've not had a drink, and it'll be not next month, the month after, I'll be 15 years without a drink. And for this alcoholic to have not had an alcoholic beverage is a fucking miracle, right? But that's not my sobriety date. My journey just started there. I kind of got into recovery, and then 6 or 7 years later, I kind of understand that I needed more, and that's probably linked with my mental health, but also understood that, you know, all of us have, you know, kind of problems with, you know, feeling that we're good enough. Those that are in addiction or whatever can have maybe a bit more issue with that. For me, I did, and I needed to do a lot more work, and I understood that there was a lot more work to do. And so I had lots of many sobriety days. There was drugs, food, it was relationships, codependency, so much to look at. And so it was like I had to start again. And so I always acknowledge that I haven't had a drink in 15 years, but it doesn't mean it's my sobriety date. It just started there, really. And that's just my experience. That's just my path. I kind of am envious of those people that get into recovery, get into a fellowship, and then they're at home, and they've found their community, and they build their family, and it's so lovely to see. And it just wasn't my experience. I've trouble trusting, and I have a lot of kind of issues. Food, I started to use food, and codependency, just because I just didn't have enough self-worth. And I've worked on that, and I still have work to do. In fact, I've got a new sobriety day coming up. It's a fellowship that fits what's happening right now for me, and I think I'm ready. I'd been in this fellowship, probably entered in that fellowship 8 years ago, but I run out the door. I did it. I gave it a little bit, but I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready, and I think I am now. So that's exciting. So another sobriety date on its way. But look, you know, people could say, well, it's kind of addicted to recovery, right? Well, fucking rather that, and maybe it is. But look, I've got something from every fellowship that I've been in. I've got a deeper understanding of who I am, and so today, you know, I'm so grateful. I'm so lucky. I have a good awareness of who I am. I'm no saint. Fuck that. You know, I just fly straight as much as I can, be as honest as I can, try and be as vulnerable as I can when I don't want to be, and it's working. It's working in the sense that I don't look back. And so I know it's worth it. So look, recovery, what I'm trying to say, I'm waffling now, but what I'm trying to say is there's a solution. And even though the hardest thing, I just want to say that it's so fucking brave and courageous for anyone reaching out, right? If they're going through, if they're in an addiction, I suspect they are. Because like I've just explained, your body, mind and soul are telling you you're fucking fine. Or they're not saying you're fine, but they're going, no, don't, it's too scary, it's too much, you can't do it. It's telling you everything but. And if you reach out on top of that, fucking, I salute you. It's fucking the most courageous thing I think anyone could ever do, is reaching out for help when that's the last thing we want to do, because it's based in shame and everything's telling us to not. You know, getting into recovery when our body and everything is saying to us, fuck that, you know, you don't want to be here. It's tough. So yeah, I salute you. And yeah, to know that there's a solution, there is a way forward. Thanks for listening, guys. I'm looking at the time now. It's been quite a long video, probably one of my longest, but I think I needed to kind of try and encapsulate the complexity of it and summarize that, so I can't do that in too much of a short video. But thanks for listening. I'll try and put some links in the bottom for anything that might be relevant to anyone who has a loved one who's going through anything, or if you are, please comment, like, subscribe. It's all free. I'd really appreciate that, and I hope to see you in the next video. Thanks, guys.